Welcome to Workforce Observer, the podcast where we go beyond the headlines to uncover the real forces reshaping work, talent, technology, and the business of staffing. Joining us is John Winsor, a trailblazer shaping the way we work. He is Executive Fellow at Harvard Business School, founder of Open Assembly and now Chairman, co-author of Open Talent. A leading voice on the future of work, John is redefining how organizations use open talent and AI to unlock global expertise. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I think let's start by getting into, I would love your take on two or three AI, in work trends that
Yeah,
leaders can't afford to ignore right now.
that's a great question because I've been just kind of reviewing some stuff. I'm making a little video for HBR right now. And so I've been reviewing an article we just did on AI agentics that came out in May. And we have another one on who the leaders should be for AI. So I think I'll talk about those two things. I mean, we did some research at our lab at Harvard called our institute, Digital Data and Design Institute. And one of the things we found really interesting was a project we did with P&G. And we really tried to think about what's the difference between thinking about AI as a tool versus a teammate. And so the body of research is called the cybernetic teammate. What we found is there were so many more positive things that came out of thinking about an AI agent as a teammate versus just a tool. And that is when you have a tool, some people hide that tool. They're trying to think of it as a competitive advantage, or they're feeling like they might fall behind. Whereas if you name the teammate, it's Julie or it's Joe, then that all of a sudden gets people to start building that into their systems and their thinking. Let's ask Joe, what does he think? What does Julie think? All those kinds of things. So I'd say that's one trend. I think the other thing that's really interesting to me is some new work by Sangeet Paul Chandra. He has a new book out called Reshuffle.
Okay.
And I really believe in some of the things he's talking about. It's like there is going to be some AI implemented. There'll be point solutions, to help people in their individual work. But really what we're talking about is the re-architecture of organizations and ecosystems. And some of the things he points to, which I really believe in, is just how things like the shipping container actually redefined how shipping was done globally. A simple innovation, but it reorganized the whole system. And I think that's what's going to happen. The same thing with AI and jobs. If you think about some jobs, let's just take a historic job that was really prevalent, say a typist. So a typist was really important. And there was a department, as you probably remember, as I do as journalists, there was a department for typists. And the reason
Yep.
that was so critical, right,
Yep. Yep.
is that the cost of a mistake in a written document was so costly. If you had a
Right.
25-page document and the name of your client was spelled wrong in the document, it was horribly, ineffective, and you needed to have it redone. So the idea of controlling for mistakes, making sure that the output was perfect, needed to mean that strategy was centralized. Well, because of word processors, the tasks that a typist didn't change, but they just got distributed. With word
Right.
processing, everybody got a chance to do edits. And the cost of editing was just, oh shoot, I made a mistake. I'm just going to retype that or
Right.
re-enter that on my computer and be able to flip it out. And so I think that's the difference of like the tasks will probably stay the same, but will they go towards the same jobs? What does that mean? Right. So what jobs and what tasks will be done by agents, AI agents, and what will still be done by humans?
Fair, fair. I know you talk about this, but open talent models. So, how can AI and open talent models actually help companies break silos and solve problems faster? It'd be great if you could share a real life example. But before you actually get into how they can help, maybe just talk about what is open talent. What is an open talent model?
Yeah, so it comes from my own history. Like I was a kind of a bootstrap entrepreneur, and I never could hire. I never had the finances to hire big teams, and so I would always use teams of freelancers, and I felt like that worked really well. It happened really early in my career when I bought a magazine out of bankruptcy called Women's Sports and Fitness, and it just seemed odd to me. The former owner of the magazine, Women's Sports and Fitness, had 40 editors and writers in New York, and what was odd is you'd send a really good editor out to Boulder, let's say Boulder, Colorado, to talk to, say, Lynn Hill, who's a really famous rock climber. And the editor maybe didn't have any rock climbing experience at all, but would go
Great.
back to New York, right? And she would write an article, but she wouldn't get the nuance of what Lynn was really talking about. And so I've decided to flip the paradigm. Why couldn't I crowdsource that article from Lynn, from the readers, let Lynn write her own article, and then let an editor edit that for the readers and the audience. And so it's the same thing as I talked about with typists, right? The idea that
Right.
the jobs are still the same, the tasks are still the same, but who does those tasks gets
Who does
reorged.
the work?
Yeah, who does the work?
Okay.
And so what I think we're seeing is I think that we'll see an explosion of variable cost talent in the long run with AI, because what's happening is that companies will, my sense is companies will care more about outcomes, and CEOs and C-level folks already care a lot about outcomes,
Hmm.
but then what are the tasks that need to be done and what kind of talent needs to do that? And a lot of times you don't need a full-time
Yeah.
person to do something, right? So
Right.
reorganizing around that. The story I love to tell is that, let's just say you were promoted to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and your board told you that you needed to come up with an AI strategy. Now, there's two ways to do that. One is you can go out to your CHRO and say, hey, I need a SVP of AI. It might take 8 months to find that person. And once she's found, then she might take 6 months to hire her team and 3 more months to be able to come up with a strategy. I think the world just happening, or the world just too fast today to do that kind of thing. And so
Right.
from my perspective, what needs to happen is kind of flipping that to say, if you're a CEO, like, my outcome is the strategy. What are the tasks that need to be done to do that strategy? Let me bring in the 10 experts in this field that are outside my organization and work with my organization to figure out exactly what are the tasks that need to be done. Maybe there are 100 tasks that need to be done. Then we can assign those tasks out to teams and get that work done in a matter of a month or so. And so I think in this world that we're living in today, let's not let great be the enemy of good.
Well, I guess, yes, find someone to do the work and do it. Yeah, makes sense. Uh, I get rise of portfolio careers. What does that
Yeah.
mean for the future of work? And, blending human and machine learning, machine talent. What does it actually look like in practice, both strategy as well as for culture?
Yeah, so I think a few things. One is a portfolio career. I don't know if our society's ready for portfolio careers, right? I think we're so dominated by companies that hire full-time people, and people are just used to that very paternalistic relationship with companies where they get benefits and
Right.
all the things, all the great, things that come from companies. So reorganizing that. I think there are a few of us that have been micro entrepreneurs for a long time, or entrepreneurs for a long time, and are used to that and are willing to live in that world. But for a lot of people, it's going to be a really hard transition. My sense is the United States is a little bit behind because it doesn't have socialized medicine or nationalized medicine.
Yes, and yeah.
It doesn't have retirement services outside the organization. And so it could be a really hard transition. I think what you see in the way that humans and AI will work together. First off, I think that there'll be point solutions where people will use it, and that's what we're seeing already. Like, people, software engineers, whoever, are using AI tools to accelerate their own career. But it's not always about, if we take software engineers, it's not always about generating more code. It's about the very human skill of the judgment. So I think there's like four things going forward that humans will be really critical of, and that is judgment. Like, what is the work that needs to be done? Which is the critical work, and how do I do that? So taste, kind of brand, like, what's my style of doing it versus somebody else's style. Integration, like, how do I integrate all these different models? I don't know about you, but every day I hear about a new model coming up that
Yeah.
blows away some other old model, and it's really, really hard to understand. And how do you integrate all that stuff? And then the last thing is trust. Like, how do we know that
Yeah.
somebody's vetted this and it really works? And so I think those kinds of four things are still going to be really important, very human centric. But I think for a lot of the executional work, it's going to be done by AI.
So, what can organizations do to support this transition, to support this new workforce?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is, I think it's incumbent on the C-level executives to really commit to this. I read the other day that, most Fortune 500 CEOs already have an AI agent. It's called their executive assistant. They don't really do anything. Like, they don't write emails. They kind of have that all done for them. but they're
Right.
really out of touch with what's happening in the world. And so I think the first step is the CEO has to be completely engaged in the new model, and all the CEO, C-level players. The second thing is like building a small COE or center of excellence is really important to have a lot of folks that are involved in really, vetting that. And that kind of is the third step, is looking at what AI tools are out there and what really apply to my business, and really start experimenting. And then start building these teams that are some hybrid teams, some jobs will be done by AIs and some will be done by humans, but trying to figure that out and knowing that those things are going to be constantly evolving.
Okay, once that's done, how do or what should organizations do to re-architect? Because the I guess the rules, the talent strategy has changed, right? And
Right.
it has to be around capabilities rather than the traditional roles that we once saw,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how does this re-architecting take place? What can they do?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really confusing, especially for the staffing industry, right? The staffing
Right?
industry takes a very long time to deploy people to solve problems. And even though there's a lot of technology in there, it still takes a long time to deploy folks.
Yeah.
Platforms that go a lot faster because they preloaded communities of people and pre-vetted them, and they can deploy people a lot faster. But AI is going to even have a higher demand. I think what we're discovering is that this whole new journey is 2 years in. We're 2 years in, so there are no experts. I mean, people can say they're experts, but there's no real
Right.
expert in the world, and nobody really is trained in this new world, right? So I think that
Right.
the place to play is to think really deeply about assessing the talent. If you're
Mm.
in a company or you're in an organization, you really have to think about, how do I assess and train and upskill folks to get ready for this new world, to be ready to deploy and be able to have a mindset of abundance to change really quickly, instead of this kind of mindset of scarcity.
Yeah. It's not easy though.
No, it's
People,
not easy. It's not easy at
I
all.
think people are, I mean, not everybody is an entrepreneur. Not
Right.
everybody is, so people are nervous,
Yes, for sure. For
and it's
sure.
confusing, as you said. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
given all this, I guess, what do you do to stay resilient, especially companies, and keep their humanity? Because AI is reshaping work, AI is reshaping teams. So,
Right.
what does curiosity look like in an AI augmented era?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I think it accelerates curiosity. I've been in a few meetings lately with a few companies. Invisible Technologies is a company that has built a lot of the AI models, with the AI labs,
Hmm.
doing annotation with freelancers. And I'm just in awe of their speed. The idea that they can go really, really fast, they can align incentives with the client. It's incredible. Likewise, another example I think is what the work that Carol Chang's doing at Andela. She's really thinking hard about, how do I make sure that the talent that it's one thing to deploy talent. It's another
Hmm.
thing to deploy AI ready talent. And so how do I make sure my talent's AI ready, and really help with the assessment of talent, not just in our network, but also in the organization. Organizations have a really hard time upskilling if they don't know what they're trying to upskill towards. And this world is moving so fast.
Hmm.
It's really hard for executives to kind of exploit their current business model, all the while explore a new one. So my sense is that it's going to be critical to hire external talent to come in and really help build these new models. As a lot of the team that's there continues to fund those new models by making sure that the work that's been traditionally done gets done.
And what about the humanity of it all? Who is
I
keeping an eye on
know.
that?
I'm worried about that. I'm worried
Who's
about that.
keeping an eye on that?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I think one of the things I learned at COVID, I don't know if you felt it too, but, as we all stayed home, I was just blown away by my neighborhood. My neighborhood, we'd get together for these kind of distance cocktail parties. And the reality is that I didn't really know my neighbors very well. And we really kind of grew pretty close during COVID.
Hmm.
And it made me think about this idea of, like, I mean, people talk about culture a lot, and I get it, but I also don't quite understand. Maybe it's just me and I'm naive, but I don't understand how you can have a really intimate relationship with a coworker or somebody from your company, when all the while all your actions are being judged for performance and responsiveness and those kinds of things. So It
Yeah.
feels to me a little bit schizophrenic, and somehow along the way, I think that from a retention standpoint, companies really sold this idea of like our culture is the best. Come, build your social, community at work. It's just
Mhm.
I don't think it's possible. I think we need to build our social community outside of work. We need to build it in our neighborhoods and our families, and those are the
Mhm.
things that really need our attention right now.
Hmm. Interesting take. So as, firms scale, these open AI powered workforce strategies, what are the guardrails that ensure fairness, bias mitigation, and ethical stewardship? How does
Yeah.
Open Assembly advise on trust and accountability in this whole game?
Yeah, I
In
think that's
building.
super important, right? I think that's super important. We're really inspired by the work at Gloo. So Gloo is a company out of Boulder that's been doing a lot of faith-based work in the digital transformation. But one of the things
Huh.
I really respect with Scott Beck and his team is that he's been really involved with the Human Flourishing project that Tyler Vanderweel runs at the Human Flourishing Lab in the Department of Public Health at Harvard. He's been doing it for a number of years, I think 16 years now, and measuring what is human flourishing in 22 different countries. He works with Gallup. It's quite a big project. I think that's the thing. We need to think about building AI that really encourages human flourishing. What does that mean? How
Mhm.
does it really accelerate that? And we should really avoid things that don't contribute to human flourishing. I think that's the first pillar. The second pillar is, and I think Cloudflare and 11 Labs and certainly Glue is doing some of the same things. Thinking about what is digital rights management? How do we embed digital rights management? Cloudflare is now blocking any of the AI companies from scraping stuff from websites without being compensated. And likewise, 11 Labs is doing the same kind of thing. If somebody uses AI built on an artist's information, then they compensate. There's a compensation structure. And likewise, Glue is doing the same thing. I think that's a whole nother pillar that's really important to
Right.
think about is this whole digital rights management. How do we all benefit from the success of AI as it grows?
Right. Just tell me a little bit about what Glue does, because you mentioned it and I'm not familiar.
Yeah. So Glue's a really interesting company. Scott Beck's a really great friend. He's a serial entrepreneur. He started Blockbuster Video in the 80s. He started um, Einstein Bagels and Boston Market and Ancestry.com and Service Magic. And he's been really, really passionate about, faith is really important to Scott. So he's been trying to figure out how to bring the whole faith ecosystem up to modern days by digitally transforming that. And I think there's a lot of things that are important. There's no doubt that our religious structures, whether they're Christian or Hindu or whatever structures those are our moral guideposts. So if we look at the way our societies are structured, they usually have something to do with the ability for us to get together as a community and decide on what are moral rights. And I don't think we have that in the discussion with AI. So Glue's really focused on the digital transformation of the faith-based system writ large, and has been building that, and has really moved into the whole AI space, trying to build stuff so that people who digital rights management. If you're a pastor in Chicago and somebody in the Congo uses something from a sermon, 250 million sermons are written every weekend, and so the amount of information that's out there. But if you can help people share in the success of that, and I think that really, if we can create those structures in that system, then we have the ability to create those structures elsewhere in as AI grows. And likewise, just really focusing. I think we need a moral foundation as AI grows. And I don't think it's there right now. I think we need good leaders who can think about that. It's almost akin. I was talking to Carol Chang the other day from Mandela, and I think we need more female leaders. It's so male driven and paternalistic and
Right.
competitive. And I think we need much more of a maternalistic outlook on the growth of AI. Like, how do we take care of our children? What does it mean to help humans flourish and and grow and be
Right.
successful? But we're
More of
missing that conversation.
more of a nurturing
Right.
vibe as opposed to go out, do, build,
Right.
create.
Exactly. I think that's hugely important. Hugely important.
Yeah. Yeah. So for Open Assembly, how do you advise clients? What do you say? I mean, it must be so hard. I mean, do you have?
Yeah, it moves, right? It moves. So we have a collective of thought leaders, and we are connected into D-Cube to help bring together the best thinkers and talk about what's happening. It's a really small group. We keep it to 25 people. Just,
Mm,
I kind of just want to hang out with my friends and be inspired by the people I really like to be inspired by. And then I do a little bit of advisory work, but just people I really want to work with and people that I'm really inspired by.
right.
I'm long enough in my career to I just I'm too old to think about like working with people who don't want to really do things. And I think one of the things I've been really good at in my career, being involved in transforming a few industries, the publishing industry and the advertising industry and some of the stuff in the open talent stuff is I like people who really take risks and really want to move things. And I think we're at one
Right.
of those critical moments, right? You
Right.
can, there's a lot of people talking the talk, but I
Yeah.
find there are very, very few people that are walking the walk. And
Mm.
it's, that's who I want to hang out with and be with. And so those are the people I'm connecting with to do, to help them along. If I can help them nurture their companies and their careers, I'm super psyched to do that.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So 5 years from now, what will distinguish the AI disruptors from the disrupted? If AI is writing the rules of competition, what's the new playbook for winning, do you think?
Well, you can look back at other technologies. I think there's some glimpse of how it might shake out. So if you think about something simple as the barcode that was introduced in the 70s, there were two big US retailers, right? There was Kmart and there was
Yes.
Walmart. And both
Yes.
decided to implement barcodes. Kmart decided to actually allow for local stores to buy on their own, to have their own systems, to know their own customers. Whereas Walmart took the barcode and actually took that and took the information and really shared it transparently with all their suppliers, even demanding that suppliers change the way they package their goods
Right.
and be in charge of redistribution of goods as they run out. And that kind of thinking about Walmart as a foundation of an ecosystem, whereas Kmart thought of barcodes and their role as a point solution in people buying things. It really changed the way that the companies grew. And my sense is the same thing is going to happen, right? That those companies that adopt AI not as point solutions, but as re-architecting their organization and being able to deliver things in a much more efficient way to their customers is going to
Customers.
yes are going to play a much larger role. That means in a lot of cases that the jobs are going to have to be rewritten and tasks are going to be recombined in different kinds of jobs. It's just the way the world works, and I think the world's worked that way for a long, long time. But I think the difference here is that the speed in which the innovation's happening is much, much faster, and really terrifying. So trying to figure that out is really, really hard, right? Because most organizations were actually built in an analog era, pre-digital, right? And that's not helpful. Like to go that slow, to not rely on information, to rely on archaic hierarchies, slow processes. It's going to be really, really hard for those companies to adapt. They've got to really have a leader that's willing to challenge the company, and almost to the point of saying, like, if we don't get this right, we're out of business.
Okay. All right. So if AI is the biggest disruptor of our time, we're not arguing it's not, what's the one belief about work you think will be completely obsolete? Maybe in 2 years, maybe in 5 years. Do you have anything like that?
The the one idea of work,
Yeah, one belief about work you think will
one
be
belief about work.
obsolete.
Well, I
Yeah.
think, I think work is changing really quickly already, right? I mean, think about, I mean, I've been doing this work in the open talent space for 25 years, and it wasn't until COVID hit that anybody even believed me that this was going to be the idea. And I always talk about that, in 2002, I was writing my first book called Beyond the Brand. I was living in Mexico and didn't have internet connection in my little village. And so I found a guy, Brian, who's a fellow surfer who was selling satellite dishes, and I paid him $6,000 for a satellite dish that he'd brought in from Canada into Mexico. We poured the cement on my roof, and we actually went down to the payphone and called Hughes Satellite to lie and say we were in Northern Ontario and get the code for the satellite. And all of a sudden, I was connected. And so I've been remote working for a long, long time. And I think the deal is like work is not a place to go. It's a thing to do. And I think that's what really we discovered during COVID, right? The idea that we could really work anywhere, that the things that we're doing now with digital transformation, I'm sorry, with kind of virtual connections
Connections.
are really, really critical. Now, I'm not saying that it should be 100% remote, and I'm not saying that some of the back to work efforts aren't important, because I do feel like culture and being together is really important. But I do feel like with all the things that are already happening, that we can focus on the things that are really important to us, our friends, our family, our lives, beyond, being in a certain place at a certain time to do the work we need to do. I think that's only going to get accelerated, in this idea, in this place of work. In fact, I was speaking to a company in Israel yesterday or the day before. Asaf Horowitz is his name, who's CEO of a company called Brain Vivo. And Brain Vivo, they're a bunch of neuroscientists, and they're actually doing MRIs of people, and then in the MRIs showing them images to understand what images trigger what kinds of blood flows inside the brain,
Hmm.
and then being able to capture that. And they're creating digital twins of people that actually give people the ability to actually use their expertise as a digital twin. And they're about 85% accuracy right now, understanding how our mental models are built structurally, can actually express that in a really interesting way. I love that. And I love the idea of me at some surf break, turning off my phone, but my digital twin out in the world, doing the work that I want to do, or doing the work I want to be engaged with, and being kind of the learning system. So I think that, I think there's that. I also think that, the world going forward is going to be driven by learners and the people that really want to jump in and do and learn. If you just want to call it in and do a job and not be that into it, you're not going to have a job. It's just not going to happen. So
Be curious, be learned, and keep moving.
yeah,
That's what you're
exactly.
saying.
Exactly.
All right. All right. One piece of advice for people in the world of work, CEOs, workers, what would it be? It
Yeah,
could be two pieces of advice as well. I mean, it doesn't have to be one. I'm just saying one.
you've stolen one, and that is to be, stay curious, be curious. I always loved this idea, being an entrepreneur for so long. I've launched 6 companies and exited those. And I always loved this idea. One of my friends who's actually, he was an entrepreneur, and now he's a venture capitalist. He always says, being an entrepreneur is super simple. You just have to identify what wants to happen and then just help it happen. And I think that's the same thing that applies to everybody, right? You need to be curious, be engaged with the world, understand what wants to happen, and then just help it happen, and help it happen along just a little bit. So,
Sounds so simple. Thank you, John Winsor. I love that.
so much.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate your insights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.